I'm going to talk about notebooks in Azure Data Studio for the DBA. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat and someone will just shout them out to me and we can go and explore whatever it is you need to learn. It's amazing having these online presentations. So, bonjour, guten Tag, buenas tardes, dzień dobry, feskima. All of the hellos and the good afternoons to you. My name's Rob. I'm a consultant. I'm lucky enough to be an MVP. The best way of getting in touch with me to ask questions is on Twitter at SQLDBA with Beard. You can find all of my slides and my code at Beard Media Presentations and Beard.media Notebooks. I'm also written a book with Chrissy Lemaire called DBA Tools in a Month of Lunches, and there's a 40% code that will work for all Manning publications. So, what I'd like to talk about is running queries. Something that we all do when we connect to our data platform. Of course, we also want to say thank you to Club Power BI for putting on this event and enabling us all to share our knowledge and for you to all learn for free. But queries. People with old grey beards like I can remember the time when we used to query our SQL servers using these command line tools or this strange GUI. And there's a problem that we had here. For 2.5 decades, we've had the same problem. There's a famous quote that says, Houston, we've had a problem. I'm a PowerShell nut. I love PowerShell. So here are all the ways that you could run PowerShell, and they all have the same problem. Even if we come to Management Studio, we've got the same problem here. Let's imagine that you've been called out at 3 o'clock in the morning, that you've run a query to identify what the problem is with most important system. And you've done your diagnosis. You've maybe got 10 or 15 queries open in Management Studio. And this particular one says, let's say, store ID 934. And you know that means that something is wrong and you know there's a way of fixing it. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, when you're back at work and you're having the wash-up meeting, when the people who have the clipboards and the Excel sheets and they want to know, why has this happened? What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen before? How can we get alerted about this earlier to see what's happened? What did you do to fix it, and can we do that better? One of your colleagues who's been asleep all night, who's woken up and had his espresso and his breakfast and then come into work nice and calm, says, no, I'm not sure it said 934. Last week when I was on call, it said 92,473. And that means something completely different. Are you sure it was 934? And you go back to Management Studio. Maybe you've still got it open on your laptop and you go and you look through it. Oh, no, Management Studio crashed. Your results have gone. Maybe if you'd used Azure Data Studio, the brand new amazing cross-platform system, maybe that would have had the same. No, still has the same problem. I'll make it a bit bigger so we can all see where the problem is. It's that cross. And the thing is, when we run our queries, we get our results, we take some action. Unless we copy them into OneNote, or we put them into an Excel file, or take some other action. Once we've hit that cross, then you see our query results, they're just gone. they're all gone. There's no way of getting them back. The results have gone. And this, I believe, is the number one biggest reason why you should make use of notebooks. What do we need to be able to work with notebooks? Well, first of all, as we just mentioned, we need Azure Data Studio. For those of you that don't know, Azure Data Studio is the cross-platform environment for connecting to your data platform. So let's get the biggest question out of the way. So it's only for Azure? No. The name Azure means that marketing people think it's cool. Azure Data Studio will connect to all supported versions of SQL Server, whether they're on premises, whether they're on your laptop, whether they're in the cloud. So, of course, it has additional functionality that brings in the new data platforms that we've got, the big data clusters, the SQL data warehouse, Synapse, managed instance, Azure SQL database. Those are all going to work really well with Azure Data Studio. But so's SQL 2019, 17, 14, 12, 08, 08R2. Those are all going to work just as well with Azure Data Studio. And in fact, if you're just querying data out of a database, you'll find that it'll probably work okay, even back to older versions. I know some of you have got older versions of SQL Server. So question number 2 we get is, oh, come on, Rob, it looks just like Visual Studio Code. You know, here's Visual Studio Code on the left and Azure Data Studio on the right, or is it the other way around? They do look identical. And the reason that they're identical is because they're based on the same code. So Azure Data Studio uses the same code as Visual Studio Code. In fact, if you're using the stable release, released each month, it's exactly the same code. If you're using the Insiders version of Azure Data Studio, it's based on yesterday's Insider version of Visual Studio Code. So why do we have 2 different products based on the same code? I have a jokey answer for you, not serious. And the answer is, data people like pretty colors. Of course, it's a joke. But as you can see in that picture of Azure Data Studio, we've got something that looks like a registered servers list, and it is able to be color coded. Azure Data Studio also has other overlays that enable us to show more information about our data platform. And these can all have colors, graphs, additional information that we can overlay on top of Azure Data Studio. And that's the functionality that you don't get within Visual Studio Code, as well as the additional big data cluster, managed instance, new Azure Data Platform connectivities. So we're talking about notebooks. So we need Azure Data Studio. What else do we need? This is a picture of Jupiter, the planet. It's a picture of the south pole of Jupiter on the latest flypast. But for a notebook, we need this Jupiter, the one spelt with a Y. And the reason it's got this name is firstly from the planet. Secondly, it represents the programming languages that Jupiter supports. But thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, I think, is Galileo, the first person to discover the moons of Jupiter. When he released his research, it included the data that he'd used to make that calculation. And it's the first notable example of including all of the original data and the workings out, enabling other people to work through that data and make sure that they got the same calculations. And that's the basis of notebooks. So a Jupyter Notebook, what's this? Well, first up, they were for people like Terry and Simon here. They're the data scientists, the people that take the data out of databases, out of flat files, out of all of these different places. And they do magical things, and they train models, and they write in Python and R and Spark. And they do things that I don't understand to enable businesses to predict what is going to happen or to analyze their data in special ways. Originally, I'm a production DBA. Why do I need a notebook? If they're all about Python and R and Spark and predictions and models, how is that any use to me as a DBA? Well, DBAs, sometimes we like things spelled out simply. So when I saw this, I realized and understood. A Jupyter Notebook is a document that can contain text, executable code, images, and the query results. Magic. Jupyter Notebooks don't just work with data. They also work with other languages like PowerShell. This week was the PowerShell Conference Europe, and you can find even more videos if you want to learn about PowerShell at PowerShell.love. I think we've probably had enough slides. Let's have a demo. Let's even have a demo by pressing that button as well. There we go. That's your end slide. Okay. So we're going to have a look in Azure Data Studio. And the #1 most requested feature for SQL Server Management Studio is dark mode. If you go and have a look on the user voice or connect or whatever it's called now, you'll see the highest voted request. Please, can we have dark mode for Management Studio? Well, dark mode for Management Studio is really difficult because the spaghetti of millions of lines of code, the way it's been added on over the years, makes it tricky to be able to give that full interface. In Azure Data Studio, as you can see, we've got dark mode. I'm going to teach you some shortcuts. I'll tell you what I'm pressing, and I want you to remember that everything that I say for shortcuts that works in Azure Data Studio will be the same in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to press F1. Excuse me. I press F1. That's going to open up the command palette. On a Mac, you'll have to place Command and Shift and P, and you can do Control and Shift and P on a Windows machine as well. But the command palette is the place to go, because as you type in, if you were to type color, spelt in the American fashion, unfortunately, then you'll see that the list of commands you have available will automatically filter. And in fact, the most recently used from doing these presentations is the preferences color theme. So press enter, and we have all of these different color themes by default. I've got a PowerShell IT one because I've installed an extension. But as you can see, they enable you to choose different colors and get previews. And in fact, there's many different dark versions that you could have. Perhaps as a production DBA, you want to make sure you're working in red. I really can't imagine working in this color. But a wise man told me that what you should do when you're giving demonstrations is you should always do demonstrations in light mode, even if, like me, you prefer working in dark mode. So we're going to give this demonstration in light mode. Here's another good thing about Azure Data Studio. If I press Control and plus, everything gets bigger. So you can see I can keep on going. We can make the entire interface bigger, really useful for being able to make sure we can see what's going on. I mentioned before that all of my demos, all of my presentations, all of these notebooks are available on my GitHub. And one of them you'll find is called Markdown in a SQL Notebook. So let's start to look at how we would work with a notebook. Perhaps we'll even only have one of these open. So I'm going to press F1, and this time I'm going to start typing notebook. And you can see that we've got a number of commands for a notebook. I'm going to start with new notebook. It's going to open us up a new notebook. Annoyingly, open up that pane as well. In Azure Data Studio, what we get when we open a new notebook is this that says you can have code or text. We've got capability to add our code cell or our markdown cell up here. This is the insiders version. We've got a run all button, which I'll come back to later. Within Azure Data Studio, we can connect to our instances. So we've got a change connection here. And as you can see, you can pick from previous connections. You can pick from the connections you've got in your registered servers, for want of a better word. And you've got kernels. Now, these aren't the Linux type kernels. This isn't at that lower level. A kernel is simply within a notebook, the language that you want to be able to use. And you can see by default, we've got SQL, PySpark, Spark Scala, Spark R, Python 3, and PowerShell. So we'll leave it on SQL for a minute. Over here, again, this is the insiders version, so this will be coming soon if you don't see it. You've got a button that says collapse cells, a button that says clear results, and a trusted button. Let's split these up. And we're going to say that you could follow along by going and reading this notebook. So we'll click a text. We'll have a new text cell. We've got a nice tabular menu above here that enables us to do things, but this is just Markdown. So we get a live preview as we start to type. We can see that we've got a big heading, maybe one that's a bit smaller. Maybe if we put three of these, it will go smaller again. You can see we start to get some information. So let's build up a notebook. So we'll have things to do in the morning for the junior DBA. There we go. And you know, the best thing about this is you must make sure that you do these things. I will hit enter, and this will then come on the second line. Ensure you follow. Oh, hang on a minute. If you look here and ignore my spelling, you'll see everything's on one line. Like YAML, notebooks Markdown will make you love spaces. So we don't just need one space. In fact, we need two spaces. And now we have our instructions have now gone on to 2 lines. Ensure you follow these instructions. So here's a good use case for our notebooks. We can actually create documentation, run books, if you like, to be able to do things. So maybe we want to give our junior DBA a list of things to do in the morning. So the first most important thing to do in the morning is make Rob a cup of coffee, otherwise he gets grumpy. Number 2, most important job for the junior DBA, check the backups completed successfully. There we go. Yep. Never type in demos, they say. I say all.
Rob, someone is asking for something. He doesn't have, or she doesn't have a plus cell, just have a plus code and plus text.
Ah, yes. So you're probably using, let me open this one. So if I do F1 and new notebook, then you probably see this button. So this is the normal version of Azure Data Studio. I'm showing you things in the insiders version because from next month, this is the view you'll see. So in a normal Azure Data Studio, you're going to see this code and this text button. It's going to look like this. The functionality is the same.
Perfect, thanks.
You're welcome. So we're doing our thing. Oh yes, right. I like to be kind to my junior DBA, so I'm going to say, then make yourself a cup of coffee. It's only fair, after all. They've done their jobs. Check the devs do not have SA. Ensure Rob has not misspelled in documentation. There we go. So we now got a list of things. So we can have a look at this. If we close it, you see we've got a nice bulleted list with some mistakes. But realistically, perhaps for my junior DBA, I want to make a good. I should make this a little one more smaller so you can see the live preview as well. Maybe we want to make a proper list. So if we do a list, we can just do that by adding a 1 and a 2 with a full stop. We'll do a 4. We'll do a 5 and a full stop. It's just in there. And as you can see, it comes out. That spelling mistake is going to annoy me. You can see it comes out 1, 2, 3, 4. See, the problem with lists is that as soon as you write them and you number them, you think they're not in the right order and you need to make a change. Now, I don't think it's very fair on my junior DBA to check the backups before they've had coffee. So we'll allow the junior DBA to get some coffee first. So here's a good little trick that you can use to have fun with your colleagues and co-workers. You've seen that here we'll just do a close or an edit to see what's happening in our notebook, and the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you look here, as long as this number is less than an int, you can put any numbers you like. Whatever it starts with, that's what's going to happen next. It's just a bit of fun. But it's an important point. Here is our notebook. Here is our list of instructions. Maybe we would then add a code cell and we'd say something like, let's just do. So, actually, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. There's no way of telling for this notebook when it was run or who did the running of it. So perhaps what you might do first is do something like, Rob, you're writing T-SQL. There we go. Otherwise, I write PowerShell. It's my default number. And user session. No, what do I want? I want S underscore user. Oh, I've forgotten the name. Username. It's not the right one, I know, but we'll have that. Pick an instance. Valid. Yes. It's because we need that one on there. Here we go. So now we've got our results. I'm going to take that away because we don't know. We don't need that. We'll do at 7. Press play. We've got our results. Up here, we could run every cell here. Now, normally at this point, people start saying, well, that's cool. We've got our results. Can I choose to run against different instances? Maybe I want to write something for my availability group and I want to connect to the primary and I want to connect to the secondary. How can I do that? Well, don't forget, this is documentation. So you could then say, let's not put it there. Let's put it down here, please. Maybe you could say, now change the connection to the secondary. So we could, that's how you enable that to happen. The other question I often get is, can we change the kernel? Can we run different languages within the same notebook? No. I mean, you could try changing that kernel. Sometimes it might work, but it's not going to be very stable. Things are going to crash and fall over. So we've got some documentation. Maybe we've said change the connection, but realistically, we want some pictures. Now, I don't know how long this is going to work for, but I do know that I wrote this notebook on the left about 8 months ago, and it's still working. This is the best way I found of creating images. So we've got now changed the connection to the secondary. Put a couple of spaces in there. Let's show our users. We'll do, I don't know which machine that's going to work on. We'll do Windows key Shift and S. That's going to open up Snippet, and we'll just grab that there. Now the snip is saved to my clipboard. Then go to a GitHub. Let's open this on this page. There we go. Go to a GitHub repository. Any GitHub repository will do. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to show you this one because this is where you can find the presentations and the notebooks that we're using right now. In whichever one you find, go to Issues, hit New Issue, and paste your screenshot. You'll see it says uploading image, and then it gives you some markdown. So we'll close that, cancel that. Now in our documentation, we can say this is how you do it. Paste in our markdown from our GitHub, and there is our picture. It's magic. It's as easy as that. Super cool. Okay, so we've got our results here. So this was done at 15:54:50. Let's save this notebook. We'll save it in CTemp because that's the best place to forget about things. And we'll call it Power Saturday IPYNB. That is the extension for our Python notebooks. Now we save it. Now remember, we were talking about the cross. What happens if I hit this cross? My results are gone. So let's open it in a completely different program. Let's open it in Azure Data Studio. So if we open a file, oh, good. I get to do this in tiny, tiny writing. CTemp Power Saturday, that's probably it. There we go. So there is our notebook, and here are our results. Look, we've still got 15:54:50. Those are the results from our query. If this was our original 3 a.m. in the morning call, and our work colleague said, are you sure that it was 9:32? You could say, yes, here are my results. Excellent. So let's open Insiders back up. Let's open that back up for in a minute, and let's have a look at what is inside a notebook. So you remember we had some results, 15, 50, 54. So if we do get content and good. To get lots of notifications, that's annoying. C/temp/ not Pordenone, Power Saturday. There we go. You can see that our notebook is basically just some JSON. You see the JSON at the top says what type of notebook it is, which language we're using. Here is our markdown. You see cell type of markdown, and here are our results. Now you remember, our results said 15:54:50. There are our results. So you can see that in the flat file, we have got the data from our results. This is really important for a number of reasons. Number one, if this query that you write brings back 2 GB of data, your JSON file, your notebook, is going to be 2 GB in size. And Azure Data Studio is not going to work. It's going to crash. Equally, if this data, if this results that we get has got PII data or data that needs to be protected for some corporate reasons, that is also going to be stored in the flat file on disk. So you need to understand that and think about what you're doing with the results of your workbook. But it's a flat file, which means that you can put it into source control. How brilliant is that? You can source control your notebooks. In fact, if you go and look on my blog, you can see how one of my clients, we put our notebooks into Azure DevOps. We created a pipeline that would take those notebooks, place them onto the admin jump box, and then automatically create an index notebook. So there's plenty of ways that you can extend this and make it better. If we look at, let's look at this, getting logins from extended events. We can use source control within Azure Data Studio to do a diff of what is committed and what the new things are. This shows us that I hid the input, so I collapsed the cell. This is how that's represented in the JSON. So the thing with none of those are going to have it. The problem with using source control with your notebooks is great for the content. It's rubbish for the SQL results. I don't know if we go back to here, you can see that our results came out like this with the fields, the columns, and the data, the rows. Now we only had one row here. If you've got 200 rows and you've got 10 columns, then the columns are going to sit up here at the top, and each row is going to be spelled out in its own little array of JSON block. So when you're trying to do a differential between the results within source control, that can get quite tricky, but it's possible. So what I'm going to tell you is that more things about Markdown can be found in this notebook. You can see how you can do headings, how you can emphasize your text, how to make quotes. You can see how to add links, how to add images, just like we've explained. And, you can see a picture of me without a completely full beard. You can look at code. So you can see how you can embed code into your Markdown for descriptions. And also you can see how you can put GIFs in. So you might think, come on, you're just being silly. You just wanted to show some silly GIFs. Absolutely. I want to make you smile and have fun in this world that we live in right now. It's a bit crazy. But most screencast software that takes videos of your screen as you use them can output into a GIF format. So as well as having your documentation with text, with bullets, with links, with images, you could also put in some screencasts that you've turned to GIFs that say, yes, click this and then do this and then push it over there. So it's another possibility. And just because searching for GIFs of windmills gave me these two and they made me chuckle, you can see those two. So let's look at some notebooks. Close these. And again, all of these notebooks are available in my GitHub, so you can go and do all of this. So you can see one of the things I do here is I make sure that let's connect to 2017. It might be 2019, but we'll find out. You can see that when we run the notebook, we can put in here, this is when it ran. And now we could click a run all. This is just going to get the logins from an extended event session. It's one of the things that we had for one of our migration projects was how many people are logging in, which databases are they logging into. And I've made this a little bit simpler, and we just grouped them by day, because this was the final result. After we'd migrated our databases, we left this extended event session running on the old system for a few weeks, just to make sure that nobody was coming in, there was nothing happening that we needed to worry about. But here we've got our notebook with our results in showing what's happened. I could give this to a junior DBA and they can just run it, attach it to an incident, put it into some sort of project planning. We had all sorts of requirements for this. But I'm an automation guy. I like things to be automated. Wouldn't it be cool if we could run this as an agent job? Up here at the top left is our registered service list, and 2017 N5 is the one we're connecting to. So I'm going to just connect to it. You see we've got some databases, and if you right click on your instance and click on manage, then you're going to get all of the extensions that you've loaded into Azure Data Studio that are available for that instance. To add extensions, you go to here, and then you could search for there we go, there's a managed instance dashboard. There's all sorts of different things you can do. But the one that you would want here is the SQL agent one, which is generally installed by default. So we've got, again, this is why I say that Azure Data Studio is for people who like pretty colors, because we've got the sizes of our databases. We've got some things we can see about each individual database. Let's pick the sausage factory, why not? If we picked on a SQL agent, you can see we've got the jobs that have been running. We can see how long they took to run by the size of this bar. We can see whether they succeeded or even whether they failed. There we go, got a failure there. And we could add new jobs. Along the top here, we've got this Notebooks tab. And in this Notebooks tab, let's just do this over here. We're going to clear the results. Useful command to have to be able to clear the results before you pass a notebook over to people. And we're going to copy, by right clicking, the path to this notebook. Now I'm going to look at this new notebook job. So I'm going to add this new notebook job, and it's going to say what path, where is the path to my notebook? So, well, it's here. Just copied it. We've got a storage database. This is the database where we're going to store all of our results. And because I can't remember which ones I've used before, I'm probably not cleaned up, I'm going to use TempDB. Then we're going to go our execution database. Now, our execution database is where our notebook is going to execute, but that's not to say that you couldn't use a use statement in your code block to make use of different databases. So let's pick master because it doesn't matter. I will call this one Power Saturday X events. There we go. We could pick a schedule if we wanted to. Add a description. Always add a description. Otherwise the beard gets mad. One of my things, please always put descriptions in your agent jobs. So now we've created ourselves a new notebook job. Let's run it. Whilst it's running, we'll go and have a look in TempDB, and you'll see that our storage database has got, please don't store your notebook jobs in TempDB. This is merely for a demo because I forget to clean things up. We've got two tables. We've got a materialized table and a template table. If we look in our materialized table, you can see that I've forgotten to clean up. We've got two results. So this one is from just now. This is the job ID that we connected to. This is a notebook, just some JSON. There was no error, and it's not been deleted. If we look in our template, you'll see that we've got two rows. One for each of the jobs. I think the other job is the Sweden job. Here is our template notebook and the database that we chose to run it in. This is where they are stored for the agent job to use. So let's refresh this. There we go. Recent run. It's green tick, so it's probably successful. And even better, if I double click this, what I've got is a notebook that was run as an agent job. It's got the time on it. It's also got the results of my query. So you could see how when we were looking at that old instance and we were making sure nobody was using it, we could just have an agent job running, creating some notebooks, and every week or so, one of the junior DBAs could open up Azure Data Studio, go to the instance and have a look through the results. And if they were important, then we could just save them and give them to the project manager. Now, look, this person has tried to connect to this database here. Let's go and have a conversation with them. So notebooks, SQL notebooks, awesome, cool. Running notebooks as agent jobs, brilliant. Run books, doing the same thing again and again, whether it's the morning checks for a junior DBA or it's patching your availability group, responding to incidents. All of these are good use cases for notebooks. You would have noticed in the list of kernels that we also have PowerShell. PowerShell is my thing. I love PowerShell. So let's pick how long have we got? 20 minutes. Let's have a look at how easy it is to export all of your agent jobs into source control. So this here is a PowerShell notebook. You see, it's running PowerShell. Now, notebooks running PowerShell they will work across platform. Azure Data Studio works cross platform. But this PowerShell kernel will actually use the Windows PowerShell version on a Windows machine and PowerShell Core, PowerShell version 7, the latest version, on a non-Windows machine. In general, stuff's going to work the same, but some stuff is going to be different. Some code is going to behave differently. There are some slight differences. So just be aware that it's not truly, it will work cross-platform, but you might just want to check and make sure everything's okay. The other problem with this notebook is that it doesn't know where it is. So if we look at this path, we'll copy the path and let's just edit this. We know where we're at. There we go. So this path is D, OneDrive, documents, blah, 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 .NET, agent exporting to source control. If we were to add a code cell and just do pwd, what's my present working directory? D, OneDrive. So the other thing you have to understand when you're using PowerShell notebooks is that they don't know where they are. So you will have to make sure that in all of the notebook, you are controlling where the path is because you want it to work the same on everybody's machine. You don't want people phoning you up saying, "Oh, why is this not working?" So one way to do that is to just change the directory to a particular path. And I think this path might have some things in it. So let's just check that. It does too. So what we want to do is just delete these and we will delete that as well. There we go. So our notebook's not got anything in it. And if we go back into Git, we can say removed. Let that do its stuff. Now, are you going to have finished this yet? Come on. Let's do that. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Let's see what our status is. Changes not staged for commit. Okay. In which case, I will change them to commit. Because I want you to see this, because this is kind of cool. Let's do that. Let's do git add dot. We'll stage all of those. Git commit minus m. Let's not have first. Let's have. There we go. Yep, now everything is groovy. So we can look at our status of our source control for our agents and everything is fine. In the documentation, we can give some instructions of how to make sure that everything works as you expected. And then I've got some PowerShell that's sitting in this script that nobody needs to worry about. The people running this script don't have to worry about it, because all they have to do is follow some instructions. Pick the export path. So that'll be this one here, SQL Agent Export, Beard Nook 2. Yep. We're going to get all of the instances that are running, and then we're going to export the agent jobs. So this is making use of DBA tools and some PowerShell that's been written that's going to start, as you could see, it's going to start exporting out all of the T-SQL for your agent jobs, just like this, into source control. It's a beautiful thing. And as you can see, it took a minute or two to do two. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to do 30 or 40 instances. Gives you some output. And then what you can see at the end is you're going to run git status. And it's going to say, oh, we've got some additional things to add. These are new agent jobs. So we'll just do a git add. It's going to add all of these jobs. Now we're going to say Power Saturday demo. We'll do go. There we go. And now we have added all of our source control, all of our agent jobs exported into source control. And in fact, if we were to go onto this and add a new job, let's add a new job. We'll call it Power Saturday for the demo. We'll add a step. Here we go. We'll have a new step. Step run T-SQL and select 7. And we'll say OK. So we've got a new job. New job has been added. Where is the new job being added? There it is, Power Saturday. Power Saturday, there's our new job. But if we make a change to our agents, if we then go and rerun our export here, what it's going to do is going to go through those instances again. It's going to export them out. There we go. They're all exported out to the same file. Now, when we run git status, it's going to tell us we've got a new job. SQL Saturday, Power Saturday.SQL. There is our new job. We can add this one. We could put added new job. And now if we were to go and look in our source control folder, we will see that we've got our Power Saturday job, all of the T-SQL. They are fairly ordinary T-SQL just to run it. We've got our Power Saturday extended events. If something happens to this instance, I can recreate all of the agent jobs really quickly. So here's a way that we've used our knowledge of writing complicated code. For me, it was PowerShell and agent jobs, and created something that anybody could run. Could do all sorts of wonderful things here. I love these audit ones for getting user permissions into Excel sheets, making them color coded, all with PowerShell. They're really cool. Go and have a look at them. But I've got 10 minutes left, and what I'd like to show you is something even more cool. So we're going to do what you always do if you're don't know how about something. You will type into Google or your favorite search engine .NET Interactive Notebook, and right at the top you're going to get .NET Interactive is here. Normally on here somewhere is blog post by me. Nope, that's fallen off now. And it's going to give you some instructions. They're a little bit complex, but they're okay. Take you 10 minutes or so. You need to go and install some things. You need to do things in the right order. And once you've done that, you can then find .NET Interactive Notebooks. One way of doing that is within Anaconda. Let's just do that. You can type Jupyter space lab. And it's going to spin up Jupyter. It's going to open your browser and it's going to create you a lab. Ta-da! Look at this. C#, we've got F#, we've got .NET PowerShell. You've still got PowerShell, Spark, PySpark, Spark R, Spark Scala. You've got Python 3 notebooks available. You can run a console and all of this. Brilliant. It's really cool. But what's even cooler is Control-C to shut this down. Yes, please close all of the tabs. In Azure Data Studio Insiders version, not available yet. You can have .NET Notebooks. Control W, just like it does in a browser, closes the current tab. You need to go to the cog, you need to go to settings, and you need to type kernel. And then tick this button here so that we then have show all kernels. Because right now there's a little bug, which I'll show you now. So F1, and we'll type notebook, new notebook. And if we look here, you're like, seriously, Rob, where is the .NET PowerShell? You just said we could have that and we could have C#. So I've changed the kernel to PySpark. And this is the bug. Unfortunately, at the moment, you've got to do that tick to enable the functionality. And then you've got to change the kernel. And then look, ta-ta-da, you can have C#, F#, .NET PowerShell. Brilliant. Awesome. You'll notice in my repository that I've got .NET notebooks and I've got not .NET notebooks. So the .NET notebooks generally are going to be running .NET PowerShell. And it does enable you to do some cool things. So, for example, you can run C# and PowerShell core in the same notebook. Do you remember I said in a SQL notebook or in a PowerShell notebook in ADS, you could only run one language. So what we can do here is we have loaded. So we'll run this. We've just grabbed our directory. We're getting, what have we done? We've created 10,000 files. There we go. Now we're going to start a stopwatch. And we're going to count with C# using this magic command. So hash, exclamation mark, C#. We'll just count with some C#, how many files in there. And then we'll do a stop, and a C#. We'll find out how many were stopped. This is running in normal PowerShell. So I'm going to run all of it. And it's going to tell us which one's quicker. Is it going to tell us which one's quicker? Because you cancelled it, Rob. Let's see. Whether it does or not, you can see doesn't matter, because the last time I ran this demo, I've got the results here. So down at the bottom, it's a good reason for using notebooks. Keeps your results within. Maybe you go to a client with everything set up in a notebook to run, but with another notebook with all of your results in, so that you could just see what's happening. So you can mix and match your notebooks. I think because I cancelled this one by mistake, this is going to not do its thing, which is fine. We'll just save that. Okay. But I got 5 minutes left. So this is Power Saturday. We're talking about Power BI. Here is another thing that you could do with your notebook. So one thing you could do is you could have something like this is DBA tools. Here in my notebook gallery is a number of notebooks with some containers that I've created that will enable you to learn about DBA tools, to do backup and restores on DBA tools, to create an availability group with DBA tools, to work with logins and users, to work with extended events, to work with agent jobs, and don't forget to run the cleanup, just to clean up your containers at the end. So you can write a set of notebooks about your project, whether it's for teaching your colleagues and your workmates, whether it's for open source things that you contribute to, or whether it's just for good fun. But I did promise you some Power BI. So DBA checks is my favorite thing. This is the open source module that I create that helps you to validate your SQL Server. You can see we've got the results. You can see how it works with this particular set of notebooks. I'm just going to come right down to the bottom and I'm going to run this command here. And that is going to run some PowerShell, which is going to start my DBA checks, Power BI. And of course, here we go, launching the DBA checks dashboard. This may take a moment. Up's going to come Power BI. Here we go. Yes, we don't want to update right now. Thank you. We're in the middle of a demo. And no, we don't want to do that. We'll say we've already got one of those and we'll close that. And it's going to come up and say, where is the database? SQL 2019 N5. What's the database called? DBA checks. We'll load that. And it's going to load my DBA checks data. This is just me showing off an open source module using .NET notebooks. And bingo. Management have now got pretty colors, beautiful tabs they can go through and see how things have improved or got worse. And we can even do some drill throughs, get some data. So there is a whistle-stop tour through notebooks. There's a whole load of things that we've not talked about here, but you can find out a lot of information in that notebook repository, and you can always come and ask me and others for if you have any questions. So are there any questions?
I've monitored the chat. I think there is not a very useful question right now. Some information can be grabbed after the session by looking at the video afterwards. But I'm very, very pleased that you give this session because a large majority of people are just basic user of Azure Notebooks, as I am. And that's very interesting to see all the stuff you can do with that.
Good. Thank you so much. I really hope that it helps people just to be inspired to go and see what they can do and do more things, and then let me know.
Isabel, are you here? Do you want to add something?
No, you told that right. So I already have seen the session in Edinburgh, but I'm still in love with the session and still telling to me, okay, I need to start that. And I just miss the DBA part of my job when I hear you, Rob. But that's a wonderful work. So thank you for all of that. And I think that the attendees are very interested to have your GitHub and all the stuff. So maybe the link are in your slide. So if you upload the slide, we will publish it.
Okay, so if you want to find me and these slides, github.com/SQLDBA with a beard. On Twitter, there's no a. And then the notebooks are all here in Jupyter Notebooks. Here is the presentations. 2020, the year of coronavirus. We know which, I haven't uploaded it. Power Saturday, that's my fault. Let's fix that right away. Whereabouts are we? Go. Jupyter Notebooks, presentations, good. So presentations, there we go. Add Power Saturday.
There is a typo.
There is a typo. It's my repo. I am the maintainer. I don't care.
Okay, sorry. So you are doing everything with notebooks now, and with
everything with notebooks, everything in Visual Studio Code, just to make it all work. So as soon as that's finished, I shall push it up, and you will find it in here in this folder.
Every GitHub repo is in your notebook.
That would be good. I've got 75. That would be all sorts of stuff in there.
What a treasure for us. Thank you, Rob, for sharing that.
More than welcome.
Thanks a lot. If there is no more question, I think that's time to wrap up and to give the referral of the day. Please feel free to come with us, to join us in the cafe. I think we will have a small talk about Jean-Pierre and maybe Isabelle, and after there is a referral. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.